Okay, so it's 11, so we'll start the seminar. Okay, so we're just for while I'm file tomorrow her Rovalig Shaw New Finian seminar SWGROW. So just I'd like to welcome you all to the seminar as part of the SWGROW project. And I suppose we're focusing on two sort of elements in this seminar, which is the community-owned seaweed farm in Scotland, which Morven's going to talk about, and then we're focusing kind of on energy efficiencies. So Roy and Sarah will talk about that. So Andrew's going to give us just an overview of the SWGROW project and just kind of an up-to-date version of what we're at. So Mata Keshta be then you be just higlave her chat na higlave and her and Arjagajayu agus higglin play of Agunin. So any questions we'll leave them to the end of the seminar, and if you just want to write it into the chat, I can take a note of it, or you can wait till the end and you can raise your hand and we'll take it from there. Okay, so Kuramatusha, so Andrew, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen with you, and those of you who have already been to these seminars will find this familiar. So I'm going to start. Can you all see the presentation I've got on the screen now?
Yes, yeah, Andrew.
Okay, good. So I'm Andrew Mackenzie. I work for Lews Castle College, part of the University of the Highlands Islands, and I'm the project manager for SWGROW. So what's it all about? Well, it's about this priority 1.1 that the NPA, the Northern Peripheral and Arctic Organization, have specified to increase innovation and to transfer what we learn in the project to small and medium enterprise companies in the areas in the NPA, that's Northern Peripheral and Arctic region. So if we look at where we are, this is the big map of the hemisphere. If we zoom in a bit, we can see that these are the project partners, and you'll see that they are spread from Greenland in the north to Ireland in the south. And these are the organizations who are the main partners in the program. And I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see roughly who they are. And they're all either universities or organizations who are trying to promote seaweed. So let's start by looking at what we're doing. This is the main purpose, to support SMEs, and by improving the quality of the product, the seaweed, and also to look at the branding of the seaweed products and the characterization of the seaweed. We also want to do some, if you like, pilots or experiments, trying out some of the things that we've found during this process, and we want to evaluate whether what we've done in pilots, the pilot programs, whether that it will be of use to SMEs. Dissemination is an important part because it's an open source project, and we want what we've done to be known about by as many people as possible. And as Lews Castle College, part of the UHI, is the main project partner, we do the management and communication within the group. The people that are in the main players in these dissemination, piloting and characterization are shown there: Udaras, Lews Castle College, and the National University of Ireland in Galway. And we also want to look at, in terms of quality improvement, better cultivation, better use of energy, and reducing waste from the seaweed industry. And these are the people that are mainly leading on this. Tari in Faroe, Artek in Greenland, Lews Castle College and Iceland, And you notice energy efficiency, Lews Castle College. That's Roy, a colleague of mine, who will be speaking to you at this seminar. In terms of characterization or branding, we split this into 3 regions: composition and compliance, as you see, DNA testing and branding. And these are the people mainly involved in that. And in terms of piloting and evaluation, these we split into 2 separate things. So all partners are involved in that, and also all partners involved in disseminating what we've done. So in terms of pilots, we're looking at cultivation, energy efficiency, and waste and recycling. And the outcome of all this work is that to make up a brand of excellence for seaweed across the region, a bit like Harris Tweed is renowned across the world for quality, we'd like to do the same thing for seaweed. The outputs are a DNA database, a database of processes and products, adding to efficiency in terms of not just efficiency, but also to try and bring in some renewables, because a lot of drying is done using fossil fuels at the moment. And we want to share the best practice and techniques as widely as possible. And we want to look at best practice for regulation, and this will be country specific, obviously. And we will at the end have a symposium for SMEs that will promote the seaweed in the area and their products. And we don't just want it to end there, we want to have a legacy where we will produce a cluster of, as I say, the interest groups, companies, and others to continue the work. So in terms of sustainability, it's about heat recovery, renewable energy, shared infrastructure. We're looking at whether we can get small clusters of SMEs together to share, for instance, drying equipment. We want to turn seaweed or seaweed products, maybe seaweed waste, into fuel using a combined heat and power system. In terms of cultivation, we want to reduce the pressure on wild populations and to look at the quality of the product, especially for food use, relating to whether it's best to have cultivated or wild populations, and to disseminate that with a bridge between academia, the universities, and producers. And in terms of branding, we see this as an important thing, that at the moment there are many marks of quality for seaweed, but there's no one brand that will bring it all together. So we're hoping to do that. Where are we? Well, the red arrow there at the top shows you where we are in timeline, and in terms of all the various work packages, this is where we are at the moment. Still a way to go yet. We finish at the end of 2022. Characterization and branding, we've still got work to do there. And in terms of piloting and evaluation, we're still working on that. So we've achieved quite a lot. There's a long way to go yet. And we have produced a number of newsletters. This was the one in January. This was the one in June. And this was the one in October, the latest one. And updates are available. You can see at the bottom there, the URL sw-grow.eu. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is a quick overview of the process that SWGROW is engaged in. So I will stop there and hand over to Aishley, who will introduce the other speakers. Thank you very much.
Gurmila Andrew, thanks very much. So the next speaker is Morven Gibson. So she's the general manager of Southwest Mull and Iona Development, and she's been working for that organisation for the last 10 years. They manage and run a community forest, and they're developing sort of shoreside activities, water sports, and they've just recently developed a community-owned seaweed farm. So I think you're the only one in Scotland, the only community-owned seaweed farm in Scotland, if I'm correct. And we're just very excited to hear what you have to say in your experiences. So I'll hand it over to you, Morven.
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Because our internet is terrible. Yes. Good. I'll try and share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah.
Coming.
Yeah, we can see that.
Oh, good. I can't see it, so I'll just start and hopefully. Oh, there we go. Good. Hang on. How do you play it as a slideshow in this? Oh, that's fine. Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me to come along to talk to you today. I'm looking around the room and getting a bit nervous. I'm seeing a lot of faces that know way more about seaweed farming than I do. So if you've got any technical questions, ask Agnes, don't ask me. But what I guess my job today is really to tell you about how I see seaweed farming impacting on communities and at a community level, and how to make this industry be something that really matters to local people and communities across Scotland and across the world. So that's what my presentation is going to be based around. So Southwest Mull and Iona Development, I'll refer to it as SMID as the presentation goes on because it's a bit of a mouthful, but we're a company limited by guarantee, and our operating area is the southwest area of Mull and the island of Iona. We started off as a steering group about 10 years ago and as part of the wider Mull and Iona Community Trust. But through taking control of land assets, namely our community forest, which is 763 hectares, we became incorporated in our own right in 2015. And that was kind of catalysed by ownership of assets on behalf of our community. So that's what we're all about. We're all about supporting a thriving and resilient community. We're community-led and community-owned. We are governed by a group of volunteers within our local community. They form our board of directors. We have a community plan which informs everything we do. And this community plan is quite special because we engage with all groups within our community. So we don't just rely on the whole groups of people that will turn up to a public meeting. We actively go out to our school children, to groups that we might not normally engage with, people who are working and don't often make it to meetings, and we find various and creative ways of engaging. And the result of that is that we have a mandate from local people that helps us to direct our projects and the things that we choose to do. So our vision is really based around people. So we want our area to be home to a diverse range of people with a balanced demographic. And that's key, I guess, for a lot of communities on the west coast of Scotland, the Highlands and Islands, across parts of Ireland too, and other parts of the UK, where we have got an ageing population, live in a beautiful part of the world, and we attract a lot of retirees, and young people find it hard to set up home here. So we want our vision is for people, for us to have a diverse range of people in our area. Home, that's the second thing. So again, I've touched on this. We want members of our community to have access to the housing which they need. Young people find it really hard to get on the property ladder here. I'm sure there are similar issues with other people in their communities in this call today. Our economy, we want to create a wide range of year-round jobs and business opportunities, and to diversify away from an over-dependence on tourism and seasonal work. So basically, when the SMID became incorporated in 2015, we had one employee, which was me, and now we have 7 employees with an additional 5 people benefiting from subcontracting opportunities. And finally, the environment, that's part of the vision, obviously, and probably the most important part as well, recognising the importance of the natural environment to well-being and to the local economy, and looking at ways to protect it and to reduce our carbon footprint. So you'll see our projects there. We've got your own community forest, I've mentioned that, a big forest. We operate it commercially and use it as a way of generating income so that we can reinvest into other projects and the needs of our community. got the Columbus Centre. We work in partnership with Historic Environment Scotland and have created a place where we've got local arts and crafts makers who can sell their goods, and we also have office space, hot desking space, and a community gym, which has been an excellent addition to the community, and a place where we don't even have pavements for people to run along. Having this community gym has really given us all a bit of a boost. And we also have Ben Doran. And Ben Doran's key in the Seaweed farm. It's our shoreside site, so we have access to the sea, we have access to a jetty and a slipway. We're going to have our shoreside facilities for the Seaweed farm based at Ben Doran, but we're also working with a social enterprise that is acting a bit like Robin Hood in the fact that tourists and visitors to the island will pay a full rate for learning to kayak, to sail, to paddleboard. And that's good because there aren't many organised activities in our area, so it's good to give the tourist industry a boost by creating these activities. However, the real bonus is that local people of all ages and abilities are able to pay a tiny monthly fee, which I don't even think we've been billed for the first one yet, and we all get to go and take part in these activities. A lot of our young people are Indigenous young people who live here, and they don't know how to sail, and tourists come up every year with their sailing boats and go sailing, and our young people haven't had access to that, so now they do, and it's a really special project. And then finally, Eardfada Seaweed Farm, and that's what I'm going to talk more about now. So why seaweed farming? I guess we saw it as a way of working towards our goals of creating employment and opportunity locally. So it was all about people in place, looking at what we want to do for local people and looking at where we live and the resources that are available to us and what benefits we can get from them. As a result of the Seaweed Farm, I've created one new full-time post. I think Lee is in the call just now. And that was through the Highlands Islands Enterprise graduate placement programme, and we've also created opportunities for people in our local fishing fleet so far as well, and I'll touch more on that later. We have a site, so having a shoreside site is that the community own is really important. We bought it 2 years ago, funded by the Scottish Land Fund, which is a great way of empowering communities to take control of the land and resources that are in their local areas. And then there are the market opportunities, and there are quite a few, which I'm sure you're all aware of. There's the biorefinery, bioplastics, aquaculture, food. It's boundless. Maybe not as simple as I'm making it at the moment, but we can talk about that later. So how did it happen? Well, I would say the first thing is collaboration. I think that I'm looking back on the kind of seaweed journey, which really we first started kind of talking about it about 4 years ago. And I don't think, when I've asked for help, I don't actually think, looking back, that anybody's ever said no to me yet. I like to think that that's because we've got a really exciting project, but I think that sometimes they actually feel a bit sorry for me, so I don't know which it is. I'm hoping it's more about the exciting project than actually people feel sorry for me. But yeah, collaboration has been key, working with people, learning from people, and just and listening, and then maybe actually going our own way sometimes as well, which I think is also important as part of the learning curve. We had funding from Highlands Islands Enterprise about 3 years ago, a small amount to look at a feasibility study. I think my account manager, because we're account managed by Highlands Islands Enterprise, and I think our account manager felt that we needed to actually do something because I was talking about it so much. So they gave us some money to start investigating. We have got a really good relationship with the Scottish Association for Marine Science in Oban. So Sam's decided to help us with a feasibility and options appraisal. We had a consultancy called Delfinity Limited that helped with the feasibility. And that was really interesting because that study helped us to identify 5 sites that were potentials along our coastline for having a seaweed farm. We also work with our Argyll aquaculture consultants who helped us to design our farm and are with us at the moment through our first year, helping us to learn and just being kind of a bit of a support for us. That combined with Inverlussa Marine Services. Now, Inverlussa is a marine company based on Mull. We're all very proud of them because they're actually a really big company now. They started off as a mussel farm, and now they have I think they have 10 boats that go out and service other activities around the coast of Scotland. So really big. Douglas and Helen are very kind of sort of embedded in the community, and we got a lot of help from them in terms of designing the farm as well, and they actually installed the farm for us as well. Engagement with local fishermen. I think for me, this is the bit that I'm most proud of about the whole project, because when we were first looking at our sort of marine licence and kind of choosing the sites and looking at our consultation, I was told by someone that it's okay, just tell the fishermen where you're going to put it, and if they'll have to prove that it'll impact negatively on their income before they can really have a say in where it goes. And at the time I thought, that's really wrong, because our fishermen are a really important part of our local community. Our fishing fleet are, they're key. I came to Mull 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and my husband was a fisherman, so I see the fishing community as something that helped me to be able to live here and raise my family and be involved in what I think is a great community. And I think that seaweed farming shouldn't be about impacting negatively on an industry. It should be about adding to and creating. And so we talked to our local fishermen, and inevitably they said our first site, our favourite site, they didn't like it because it was covering fishing grounds that were important to them. So we moved the site. We talked about it and we said, no, we're going to move it. And we went back to them and said, choose from the other four, which one is your favourite? And they chose their favourite. And now we've got the local fishing community fully on board, which really helps with boats and experienced skippers and advice and help about the sea and the coastline where we are. And so I think that's been something that's been pretty much the key thing for me. If I had to pick one key thing, that would be it. So we got funding from the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. We got 70% funding for the infrastructure for the farm. At that point, we had a funding gap for infrastructure and a massive gap in terms of revenue costs and working capital for the first year. But an investor got in touch with me a while ago, just a random person who wanted to invest in the seaweed industry in Scotland and was looking for a project, and someone pointed him to us. He gave us £100,000, a lot of money, and that meant that we were fully funded for our first year, and that'll take us up till when we've finished harvesting in May. Crown Estate and Marine Scotland, we've had to go through obviously all the things you would expect in terms of licensing. Crown Estate's quite straightforward. Marine Scotland, it took a long time. There was a lot of toing and froing, finding information, producing new reports and plans. Worked through all that, and I think a lot of that was quite useful, because again it helped us to learn. COVID didn't help, because obviously we were doing this right through lockdown, and some of the government agencies were not operating as quickly as they might normally be, but we got there in the end. So now we have and I've put biggest, and I've put the exclamation mark, seaweed farms in the UK. I think there's a bit of discussion about who's actually got the biggest, but I've just put it up anyway. Definitely one of the biggest, and probably the only one under community ownership. So I think that's quite special. So really just touch quickly on how it works. I'll just talk to the slide. I'm sure you're all aware of it, but we've got a 6 hectare farm. It's made up of kind of 3 2-hectare rectangles. You can see a picture of it there. We've put out 6 kilometres of seeded line, which we bought from Sam's in Oban. So that was Saccharina, so sugar kelp. Sam's is near us. You have to get a ferry, so it's about 20 minutes from the ferry, 45 minutes on the ferry, 45 minutes to drive down by road to get to us. A bit of logistics involved in terms of trying to work out when we picked up the seeds, because obviously weather is a key factor, and we had to postpone because of bad weather. So wee bit of logistical stuff involved in that, but we got there in the end. We had a local fisherman in his boat deploying, and also our aquaculture consultant brought his ribs. So we used those 2 boats to put the seeds out. And it involved 6 people locally as well, which was really good. Deployed over 2 weeks, so we decided we had set aside 2 days one week and 2 days the next week to put out 3 kilometres the first week and 3 kilometres the second week, just to spread it out in case bad weather meant we had to cut it short. Everything went really well, and we managed to actually do it in one day the first week and one day the second week, so half the time that we had estimated. We've also leased a part of our site for a social enterprise from Morven called Celtica, and it's a young guy who really wants to investigate seaweed farming for himself, and he's got a lot of skills. He's a diver. He also has worked in aquaculture before. He's got a lot of knowledge, and he's very excited about seaweed farming. And so we, instead of renting part of the site for him to test out growing some malaria, we've done a skills swap. So he comes out with our fishermen, and they kind of look at the site together every fortnight, do the checks. A week ago, when they checked, the seaweed was 3 centimetres long, which is quite good. So our babies are getting bigger. Hopefully they'll be even bigger than that next week when they go out for their check. We will harvest in April and May time, and yeah, I've mentioned the graduate placement programme already. We've got Lee, who does a lot of the desk-based research and stuff associated with the farm. So that's how we're making it work just now. But as I say, we're just going along and learning as we go. So, next slide. So yeah, I'd been asked to talk about the kind of opportunities and challenges. So I guess the opportunities really, we're going to have about 30 tonnes, that's our estimate, I don't know whether that will happen, of sugar kelp grown in pristine Scottish waters, and a very valuable product. So there's an opportunity there, and gives us an opportunity to sell something special if we can get the right market. We've got a community-owned business. So a range of community benefits. I've talked about employment opportunities a lot. I can't really talk about that enough. But also increasing confidence locally. And we found that when we owned the forest, when the community saw that we were able to own and manage this huge forest and make an income which actually makes a difference to life locally, it increased their confidence both in us as an organisation representing them, but also in themselves. So I just think that if we can make this work, then there's plenty of other opportunities as a result of this for local people. If a fisherman came to me and said they were interested in setting up a few lines themselves, then we would be really keen to support them to do that. And I think that that's really, really important. It provides a lot of interesting opportunities. In terms of, so yeah, in learning, I mean, that's a huge thing. We're at the start of something new, the first year of what is quite an entrepreneurial project, and we've learned so much already. But I remember hearing from the owner of the mussel farm that I mentioned earlier saying that recording everything that happens is key. And the thing that jumped out at me was that he said that even 10, 15 years on, they'll still kind of rewrite their rule book every year. So they'll rewrite their book that they've got all their learning in, and they'll make tweaks and they'll make changes. And I think that's what I keep telling myself, is this is the first year, so I've had a few wee issues come up, and it's all about kind of keeping going and tweaking and changing and learning, improving like what we do, and just really finding our own way as well, which is really important. I think challenges, I'll tell you really about the immediate challenge we're facing at the moment, is that we based our business plan around selling the product wet in the first year, and we had a buyer that was interested in that, and then the plan was that would give us a chance to get through our first year, and then we'd think about processing facilities for the end of the second year. That changed, and that our buyer then sort of decided they would rather have it chopped and frozen, and that was the only person that was really looking to buy it wet from us. So now we're kind of having to act really quickly and develop some freezing facilities on site. We're getting there with that, and we're having to move fast though, and also investigating drying facilities too. It's not a bad thing. Having our own processing facilities was always the goal, but it's just happening a wee bit quicker. I'd say that time is the main challenge there. We'll need planning permission and a lot of things in place by April. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll overcome bigger hurdles. And I guess cash flow, and I think that's the same for doing seaweed farming, and the fact that when you're putting your lines out in October, you're not seeing any money from them until May, and you've got a lot of costs that you have to fund up front. So cash flow is key. We were given a boost by our investor this year, but we won't have that next year. So it's something that we'll really have to think about. And really, My closing thoughts, and I guess it really is about local people and communities are best placed to own and manage their own land, assets and resources. We've heard a lot about COP26 over the last few weeks, happened in Glasgow, so it was on our home turf. And there's a lot of chat about what was discussed by the leaders and what was agreed, but the key point for me was that Indigenous people across the world didn't really have a seat at the table. And that's what we've been hearing. They felt that they didn't have a seat at the table really to get across what they were thinking, what they were feeling and what they felt the changes should be. And I guess that for me, I believe that the seaweed industry in Scotland, it doesn't just apply to Scotland, the UK, Europe, Ireland, it's a chance to kickstart a new industry where local people can be fully embedded in it from the start. We've got a really special opportunity here. Now that could be community trusts like ours, and this is what I do, but I'm really supportive of locally based private businesses as well. They're equally important, or individuals who want to start up a project. My point is that as the industry grows and starts to become more profitable, and I believe that it will, we need to ensure that as much of that profit and that benefit stays within the communities where the farms are. Let's have the seaweed industry as an example of one which isn't doing to communities and providing maybe 1 or 2 token jobs, but it's like leaking the profits out. But let's have it one where local communities are embedded in it and actually benefit in real terms from it. And yeah, I think that's me finished. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks a million, Morven. That was really, really interesting. I'm sure there's a few questions later, so just really interested to see your journey with the community and all the work you do. So Gurmila Mahigat. So we'll just head on to the next speaker, Roy Bartle, and he's in Lews Castle College, which is one of our partners in SWGROW. So Roy is a research associate in engineering at the Lews Castle College, which is part of the University of Highlands and Islands. He is a PhD from the University of Oxford, is a chartered mechanical engineer in the UK, and he specialises in heat and mass transfer of renewable energy systems. So his role in the SWGROW project is to research efficient and sustainable seaweed drying methods. So, Roy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just in the process of trying to share my screens. Let's see now. Here we go. Well, thank you very much for having me, and allow me for the next 15 or 20 minutes to take you through a bit of a tour of what I do in terms of the SWGROW project. Are you able to see what's on the screen now?
Yes, Roy, yeah.
Excellent, good stuff. Thank you for the introduction. Let's start by looking at this graph, or this schematic, because it charts, if you like, in graphical terms, what work we are doing in the renewables efficiency sector around seaweed drying. There are really 2 components to our work. One is looking at the processes specifically. That is, how do we dry seaweed efficiently, and to what extent do we need to dry seaweed? And also other processes like mechanical processes that involve chopping up the seaweed, turning them into powders and so on. To what extent do we need to do these things? And then there is a wider question around processing, which involves the whole system, from the fresh seaweed that comes into the process, the energy, where does the energy come from, and what are the outputs? And of course, there is an element of waste. It's impossible to produce a industrial process of any sort without there being some waste. And indeed, waste is not necessarily a dirty word. There are many reasons why waste is actually necessary and sometimes the most efficient way of production. I've spoken a little bit about efficiency and sustainability in the past. And historically, we spent a lot of time talking about efficiency. What's the most efficient way of doing things? And engineers like talking about efficiency. But really, we need to be using the term sustainability more, because we might have a very efficient process, but if it uses a very, very scarce commodity, then it may be far less preferable to a less efficient system that uses sustainable resources, abundant, natural, reproducible resources. And that's the philosophy by which we do our work. Now let's look firstly at the processing. And before I do so, these are the two seaweeds that we in SWGROW concentrate on. The one on the left, Lews esculenta, the one on the right, Palmeria palmata, and you'll perhaps know them by other names. In order to understand the place that they play in the general energy systems, we need to understand their properties. We need to understand their drying kinetics under natural convection systems like sunlight. If you just sort of hang out your piece of seaweed in the sun, how's it going to dry and how long might it take? Under forced convection systems like a blown air system that you might have in a commercial drying facility. And we're also looking at intermittent drying cycles. And this work package is done experimentally. So firstly, we might ask the question, how dry does the dry seaweed need to be when stored? And this work, I'm just going to go over in the briefest of terms, because I presented it in some more detail a year or so ago, and it's in the process of being published. And from a food safety perspective, water activity needs to be kept under around 0.6. And your water activity is shown on the x-axis in these graphs in front of you. On the y-axis is the moisture ratio. It's the mass of water over the mass of material on a dry basis. And the takeaway from these things is that if you want to store seaweed safely, the seaweed needs to be dried until it's dry. There's no stable intermittent point at which one can dry seaweed. And that's not the case with all materials. If you're drying grain, for example, grain can be relatively easily dried to a point at which it's no longer a food safety problem, but is not completely dry. And that's advantageous because, of course, drying costs energy, and that costs money and resources. So then we looked at natural convection drying kinetics, and I hope that you like these line art pieces of work that I've done. My artistic skills come to the fore, being a mechanical engineer, of course. So this is my schematic of natural convection. You have a table or whatever it might be, a grid, and you've put your seaweed out on the grass, perhaps on the lawn, or hung up to dry outside. Or perhaps you have some sort of an oven that's not a fan-assisted oven or a greenhouse. In short, you have the seaweed sitting out in air that is not moving noticeably. And the question that we ask is, how does air temperature affect drying in this system? And the answer is considerably. And Lews esculenta takes longer to dry than Palmeria, because Lews is a non-homogeneous material. You have a blade and a stripe as two distinct parts with two distinct drying kinetic properties. This is just a you might say high-level tour of what we're doing. If there are more questions or more detail required, then please ask, or please wait for the paper, which should be out any time. It's been under review now for 6 months, and we're starting to tire of the review process. Second question, and this brings us perhaps more to the commercial world of seaweed drying. We ask, how does air temperature and air velocity affect drying time in forced convective drying? And in this situation, you have your seaweed sitting on a tray, perhaps in an oven, and you have a fan-assisted airflow blowing over it at a given temperature and a given velocity. And this is work that we're doing at the moment, so I don't have any results to show you, but it replicates this sort of situation that one would find in a commercial drying facility. You can make these ovens as big or as small as you like. What you have are carts with trays, and you place your seaweed onto the trays, close the doors, set a temperature, set a fan speed, and after a period of time you'll have dried seaweed samples. And these are very, very similar to what you get in the fruit industry or in other drying facilities. We're also looking at intermittent drying cycles. There is research in other food processing activities to suggest that intermittent drying cycles use less energy than a continuous drying cycle. So in the graph in front of us, we have time on the x-axis and energy use on the y-axis. And what we are asking is, how does an intermittent drying cycle affect the total energy use over time? And also, does it take longer to dry a sample to the required water activity by using an intermittent drying cycle? And again, this is part of the work that we're involved in at the moment. I don't have any results, but the general expectation, our hypothesis is that intermittent drying cycles are more energy efficient, but at the expense of taking slightly longer. Overall, still, though, more energy efficient. And this is something that ought to be strongly considered for any drying process. An intermittent drying cycle has better energy use properties than a continuous one. So that is looking at the processing block in our diagram. Now let's look more specifically at the energy that is needed in order to operate drying materials. This block down at the bottom left here. And there are two pieces of work that we're involved in. One is to look at metrological reanalysis, which I will explain in more detail in a moment. And the second thing is to produce some multivariate optimization software so that a small and medium enterprise in the SWGROW project or beyond it in the Northern Periphery and Arctic region can, for example, specify the location that they want to produce in and the yields that they're expecting to achieve and the drying patterns, what times of the year and what hours of the day they are intending to dry, and from that obtain a first past the post a ballpark view of what sort of energy system they might need. And I'll come to that a little bit later as well. So first, let's talk a little bit about metrological reanalysis evaluation. Why am I, who am involved in seaweed drying, looking at metrological reanalysis? And what even is metrological reanalysis? Well, if we are to design a sustainable energy system to power our seaweed processing, or indeed any other aspect of the seaweed industry, we need to get away from the use of fossil fuels, from oil and from gas, and also from petrol and diesel for boats, and ideally to more renewable energy methods. In the part of the world that we live in, the most abundant renewable energy is wind. Solar has less of a part to play in the equation. However, those times of the year when there is least wind energy generally correspond with the same times of the year where there is much solar energy. And so a hybrid system that combines wind and solar energy will generally be a smaller and a cheaper system than one that uses only one energy source. But in order to size such a system, one needs to know the typical probabilities of wind speeds across the year. So I need to know on a given hour at a given day, what is the probability that the wind speed is going to be sufficiently high that the wind turbine is going to produce, but not so high that the wind turbine will cut out. And similarly with the solar energy PV cells. In short, we need to obtain probability density functions for wind energy and solar energy. And the way that you do that is to use one of several data sets. You can use, as we see on the left here, observations. And in the UK, we have Met Office stations across the country that read wind speed and insolation or solar radiation for every hour of the day across the year. The problem is that this data is patchy.
And it was saying to pin my order number, and I don't have one because.
Sorry, somebody's coming through here.
You know, before I order, am I going to get? I bought a pair of bits.
I'm sorry, somebody's somebody's.
One sec.
Right, I think that's back to us. Good. Problem with Met Office data sites is that they don't provide a very full picture. Many of them are patchy. They have perhaps 2 or 3 years of data and then are missing some period of time, and they seldom provide sufficient data, sufficient accuracy on their own to provide a picture of the wind speed and insulation for a location. And what's more, of course, these are fixed locations.
We just lost the slides there, just unless you were finished.
No, I'm not finished. Right, let me come back to. Let me come back to us. There we go. Right, are you seeing me again?
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Yeah.
Good stuff. And another problem with these data sites is that they are, of course, fixed, and it's unlikely that your particular Seaweed site is going to be exactly where a Met Office station is. And of course, in other parts of the world, there are other similar meteorological services. Because of that, one needs to use reanalysis models to provide at least part of the answer to your data deficit. Reanalysis models use both observations and numerical methods to estimate meteorological parameters at any location across the world within the parameters of the data set. So you specify your coordinates and it will give you historical data for that coordinate as far back as the data set will allow. They're just estimates. They're not observations, but they are based on observations. And they are therefore useful to help us to understand what energy resources are available to us when we set about designing our energy system. And the 2 reanalysis models that we've investigated are MERA-2. MERA-2 is produced by NASA in the US, and ERA-5, which is produced by the European Union's Copernicus program. Just to give you some very brief look at some of this meteorological reanalysis work, what we're seeing here on the screen in front of us is a comparison for 2 places, one on the left Aberdeen, one on the right Anglesey. Anglesey is very windy, as you'll see. And the relationship between the actual observed values across 10 years, which you have on the x-axis, and the modeled values on the y-axis. So you'll see MERA-2 and ERA-5 modeled on the y-axis. And what you see in front of you is that MERA-2 especially significantly underpredicts wind speed for both locations, especially at higher wind speeds. And this is something that has to be factored in then when you're designing a renewable energy system that incorporates a wind turbine. And what we're doing here really is to try to understand how well do these models help us design renewable energy systems for seaweed production. Another question that we've asked, and we're starting to get an answer to, is how many years data do we need to effectively model wind speed and insulation? Because historically the view has been that you need 20, 30 years of data to obtain a very accurate understanding of wind speed and insulation. And what these graphs are suggesting, and they are just preliminary results, is that after about, let's say, 4 years, accuracy does not continue to improve very much beyond that. So if you see the y-axis is the root mean square error, where we are charting root mean square error as the difference between the observed variable, which is the observations that are taken from the actual data sites by the Met Office, and the modeled variable, which is the variable that is produced by MERA-2 or ERA-5 meteorological model. And what you're seeing is that root mean square error declines with time, but the rate at which it declines becomes less and less. So one might say that for a first iteration or for a rough understanding of a wind resource, perhaps 4 years is adequate. Don't need to download much more data and process that data, because it takes an awful lot of time and computational power to use very large data sets. All right, and on to the last thing. What we want to do also is produce a multivariate optimization software package that will allow a small or medium enterprise in the Northern Periphery and Arctic region to input certain parameters and to obtain an initial sizing estimate for a renewable energy system that will power their activities. And in front of us on the screen is a typical renewable energy system that incorporates wind and solar. And the question we might ask is, if you want to produce, let's say, a ton of seaweed every day for 2 months in April and May, what sort of size of wind turbine might you need? What sort of size of photovoltaic cells? Should you have a very large battery pack, or should you rather just have a larger wind turbine? Should you think about incorporating hydrogen energy? And the answer to these questions will depend on your specific site and your production requirements. And also what you regard as optimal. Some of you may have seen this slide before, because I think it's a very important slide. Optimization is not tends to be in practice not of one single thing, but across many dimensions. And what may be best for one metric is unlikely to be the best for the next metric. But what our optimization software should allow is for the user to specify which things are most important to them, and then the optimization software will produce a system that is geared more towards those aspects at the cost of other things. So, for example, if you are very concerned about the initial capital expenditure of your system, then you can make do with a smaller system, but you might find that it is going to require more maintenance over time. And so your return on investment over the course of the lifetime will decrease. The reality is that there is no perfect system, and it's just a case of balancing preferences. So this software, when it's launched, we hope by the end of the SWGROW project, will allow the user to specify their preferences on a scale similar to this, on parameters similar to this, and obtain a first iteration rough design for a system that will allow them to undertake their seaweed production in an efficient and sustainable fashion according to their optimization preferences. Now, that is a very, very brief outline of all the work that we're doing, and I've deliberately tried to, as much as possible, avoid being too technical, although it's not always that possible in this sort of thing. But if there are any more questions, I'm very, very happy to help out further. So if you would like more information in the meantime, you might look at one of these 2 papers. We have 2 more papers in the pipeline at the moment. And with that, I thank you and pass you back to Aisling. So thank you.
Thanks a million. That was really, really interesting and a bit technical, but not too technical. We see got the grasp of it. So I'll just move on to our next speaker, to Sara Norris, and she's a program exec with the SEAI, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and she works with the business and industry team. So she's worked supporting various sectors and their energy efficiency goals. So her recent experience includes the development of the SEAI Energy Academy, which offers e-learning modules and resources on energy efficiency for business. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, hopefully you can see my presentation. I've also shared my computer sound because I've got a little animation to show you as well. So hopefully that works. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sara Norris. I'm Program Executive on the SAI Business and Industry team. I work specifically on the SME side on our e-learning platform, which is called the Energy Academy. But today I'm going to give you an overview of energy efficiency for businesses and the supports available from SAI to help you start your energy efficiency journey. Who is the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland? So we are a government body that works with government, homeowners, businesses and communities to create a cleaner energy future. And our role is really to help Ireland transition and move towards a low carbon energy future. And this means in the future that we will use less energy, and the energy that we will use will be clean. Our belief is that energy should be environmentally sustainable, secure and affordable. And we're working on developing new solutions to meet Ireland's current and future energy needs. So here's a quick overview of our 2020 achievements and our activities last year. Over 121 million was spent on Ireland's clean energy transition, and we saved over 21 million in energy costs for citizens, businesses and communities alike, and a reduction of 93,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions into the atmosphere. And these investments generally and the savings would have been through a variety of our programmes, which are very far reaching in the communities. So we've got supports for homeowners, electric vehicles, businesses, and we also offer educational programmes and supports to learners all the way from primary and post-primary schools through to businesses and their employees. But today I am here to focus on our business support, sustainability and the energy efficiency journey for businesses. So I suppose the first thing to kick off really is the benefits for a sustainable business. So when you're thinking about sustainability really from a business perspective, you have to think about the business case. Why should you change what you're doing and the things that you're doing to embed sustainability within your business? So the first reason why really is that it'll help you to save money on your operational costs. Specifically here, I'm talking about energy and changing your energy use behaviours. We know just changing your energy use behaviours alone really can help you save 10% on your annual energy bills, which you can then reinvest in your business. The second reason then is to increase your sustainability credentials, which can help you to win new business. So if you're part of a supply chain, and we're hearing this more and more really, especially with retail, that proving your sustainability is becoming the norm really to win contracts. And thirdly, sustainability can help you boost your reputation with new potential customers. So everyone is becoming more climate aware and aware of the impact of their own choices on the environment. So you want to really be in a position that you're attracting new customers and not the other way around. And then finally, sustainability can help you retain your staff and your employees. So employees want to work for businesses that are climate aware. So now I suppose from an energy perspective, how can you start to become more sustainable? Where can you start, and can you really start today? So what we've developed are 5 steps to energy efficiency for businesses. I'll explain them a little bit more in detail in a moment and the supports that we have for each of the steps. But this approach really lays out a simple guidance for businesses. Some of the businesses we find might start straight in step 3, and then others will be at the very start of their journey at step 1. I'm going to actually play a really short 4-minute animation now, kind of a break from me talking, which is always good, that will show these steps in action. Now, the example is retail, it's a department store, but the steps really is what is important, and it's really applicable to all businesses in any sector. So let me know if you can't hear the sound of this.
Meet Maeve, operations manager at a growing department store. She and Adam, the facilities manager, are working together to increase their store's energy efficiency. Let's follow them on this journey. They sign up to the SEAI Energy Academy, where they learn how energy is used and how it's connected to climate change. They discover behavioural changes which can save energy and how to read their energy bills. They review their bills and note their current energy usage and start to make small changes. In their next bill, they see they have reduced their energy use. Great start! Maeve and Adam are confident taking the next step on their journey. Next, Maeve and Adam attend SEAI Energy Management Training. They create an energy action plan, identifying significant energy users and their energy reduction targets. Adam is made Energy Officer. He'll be responsible for updating the energy action plan, getting management buy-in for change, and overseeing various energy reduction tasks. With a plan now set, management buy-in for change, and a checklist of tasks to complete, good energy management practices are now in place. Over the next 12 months, the store expands and the business grows. They are now spending more on energy, and Maeve and Adam want to see what else they can do. Using a voucher from SEAI's support scheme for energy audits, they organise for an energy auditor, Tina, to visit and analyse their energy use. Tina's report gives a detailed analysis of the store's energy use. It also includes no cost, low cost, and investment opportunities. With Tina's help, Maeve and Adam have detailed information on the store's energy use. Based on the report, they decide to invest in some energy-saving upgrades. In the store, they upgrade the lights to LEDs and install lighting sensors. They purchase an electric vehicle for local deliveries and improve the insulation of their walls and roof. They also plan on installing solar PV on the rooftop in the near future. Through a series of steps, Maeve and Adam have now increased the store's energy efficiency. They continue to review and monitor their energy use, maintaining the energy management practices now in place. They promote their achievements to their customers and suppliers, who are happy to support a sustainable business. Their staff are more motivated, knowing they're working for a business which shares their values and commitment to sustainability.
So that's just kind of a really quick overview, I suppose, of the energy efficiency journey as we see it. I really hope that it helped just to show that 5-step approach to energy efficiency in practice. But let's really have a closer look at the supports that we have from SEAI, I suppose, that can help you along the way. So the first step, as I said, there is understanding your energy use. And we've developed an e-learning platform called the SEAI Energy Academy, and this offers free training for businesses and their employees on energy related topics. And the beauty really of the Energy Academy is that it's available to everyone. So there's no eligibility criteria to join. You can access it 24/7 at a time that suits you. If you're not in Ireland and if you're on this call, you can also log into the Energy Academy. I think actually for some strange reason on the county drop down when you're registering, there's an other section, so you can just select that and you can enjoy what's on there as well. The topics that are available really are there to help you create a shared knowledge of energy in your business. So you and your team really are all on the same page and understand what energy efficiency is, the impact of energy on climate change, and what you can do to start your journey towards energy efficiency. And that journey really will be more impactful and easier from your perspective. There are currently 24 modules available. So some of the topics you can see on your screen now, so decarbonisation for business, business energy efficiency. If you're interested in electric vehicles are there. We've got eco driving, solar PV, behavioural change. We've got a home energy challenge as well if you want to learn more about more energy efficiency for your home. Energy audits as well as a new one. Electricity bill analysis and oil and gas bill analysis. I'm kind of add new modules every quarter or so, and we're going to have a new course on there for sustainable energy champions in the new year as well, which will be very interesting. And that'll kind of tackle things like circular economy as well and Ireland's journey to net zero. So it's a really good option if you just kind of want to casually, I suppose, enjoy and trying to learn more about energy efficiency and energy related topics at the moment. If you do complete a course, you get a certificate of completion as well, which is quite nice. I just want to show you, sorry, I should have played it, but there's a little video there so you can kind of see the modules look like in action. They're really animated, really interactive. There'll be kind of questions throughout it as well, just to test your knowledge about what you've just learned. And it's really enjoyable, I think, especially if you've got employees or a little team as well, they can all participate in this. So the second step then on the energy efficiency journey is to create an energy action plan. So for this, we host introduction to energy management training. Workshop sizes are around 10 to 15 people, and attendees are generally the person in your business who's able to access energy bills. They might understand some of the equipment that you have on site and can take over ownership of an energy action plan going forward. So for this, it's 2 1-hour sessions that are held online, and then you also get an optional phone call with an energy advisor after those sessions. That really offers you a chance to have a conversation and get more bespoke one-to-one advice from an energy advisor specific to your business. So in this case would be the seaweed industry. They will actually be able to help you out with your specific needs. You get an energy management guide and energy management workbook as part of this training. And the image on the right really shows you two of the areas covered in this training, which is commitment, identifying where energy is being used in your business. Both of those guides are actually also available online. So if you're not based in Ireland, if you want to have a look at those guides, you can go onto our website and you can download them and see what they're all about. I think they're really, really fantastic resource. We host this training about every 2 to 3 months. And the next ones then, of course, will be taking place in the new year. So the third step then is to complete an energy audit. So as your business grows, then you may find as well that your energy spend is also growing. So the energy audit scheme is really for SMEs that have over 10,000 euros a year spend on energy. And it offers a voucher really for 2,000 euros to complete an energy audit. And that audit needs to be completed by an SEAI registered energy auditor. We've got a list of those available online. The lovely thing about this scheme is that when you apply, you're not waiting for your voucher to come in the post or to be evaluated or anything. It's automatically issued to you in an email. So the application process is very quick and you get that voucher straight away so that you can act on it. To be eligible then for this, the SME or business needs to have over 10,000 euros spent in energy a year, have a valid CRA number and be tax compliant. So then I suppose we've gone through the educational piece, and then you go through the energy management training where you've got your energy action plan, or if you've got a larger spend, then you'll do the energy audit. And then you might find from that then that you've made some savings and you might want to reinvest them in various different ways in your business. And there's a couple of different supports for this. The first one is the Accelerated Capital Allowance Scheme. This is run by Revenue here in Ireland, and it allows businesses to purchase energy efficient equipment and through Revenue deduct the full cost of purchase from the profits in the year of purchase. So similar to the wear or tear allowance, but instead of applying it over several years, it's on the year of purchase. The equipment that is being bought must be registered on the EEE register. So the EEE stands for Energy Efficiency Equipment, and we in SAI, we maintain that register of items. For this, really what I suggest is that if you are installing new equipment on site, that you ask your supplier installer really to check that EEE register first. And they will need to spec items from that list. So it could be like EV chargers or VSDs or motors, whatever it might be. It's really wise for them to check that first so that you can avail of this. The next scheme that we've got then is the Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme. So energy suppliers in Ireland, they must support energy efficiency projects, both domestic and commercial. And for each project that they support, they get what's called energy credits. They need to actually achieve a certain amount of credits each year, and they actually have energy credit targets. So you can go with any energy supplier and ask them if they're interested in supporting your energy efficiency project. It doesn't have to be the supplier that you're purchasing energy from currently. It can be absolutely any of them on the market. The energy efficiency projects that they can support and receive credits for include insulation, lighting, heating, refrigeration. It's a really very broad list of measures. And I definitely suggest that you go onto our website if you're interested in this and have a look at the contact details for the various energy suppliers that are out there and maybe just touch base with them to see if they're interested in your project. And then kind of maybe on a larger scale then, if you have a lot of demand for heat and if you're using fossil fuels, our next grant is called the Support Scheme for Renewable Heat. So again, if you are using fossil fuels for heating, this grant might be for you. It is designed to replace fossil fuel heating systems with heat pumps or biomass and biogas heating systems. You can receive a 30% grant towards a heat pump, and then it also provides an operational tariff for biomass and biogas boilers or systems. And they use organic materials to produce heat, again, moving away from fossil fuels. And then the final grant then that I'll speak about today is our SAI Exceed grant. So that's Excellence in Energy Efficient Design. And it's a certification program that helps businesses achieve optimum energy performance. So if you've got an energy efficiency project really that's got a lot of plannings or design that are involved in getting that to fruition, such as buildings or processes, and you're reimagining them, then this is a good grant to consider, and it can provide support of up to €1 million per project. Here are two examples of businesses that engage in the Exceed grant. So Arrivo Consumer Foods, they're a global agribusiness, and they applied for the SAI Exceed process, and they installed a high efficiency heat recovery system in their fresh milk pasteurization process. And that helps them to reduce on-site emissions by over 85%. And then Dublin Airport Authority, they completed a car park lighting upgrade project installing 680 LED projects, resulting in 80% saving in energy use. So that's really an overview of our supports and grants for businesses and our 5-step approach to energy efficiency. Again, I've kind of got it on the screen there so you can kind of see how it all sits within those steps. If you have any questions really today or even after today, you can always contact me. My email is on screen. You can also visit our website for more information on all the supports that I mentioned here today. So many thanks for that.
Sarah, thanks a million. That was really informative. So I suppose I'll open the floor to any questions if anyone has anything they'd like to ask any of our speakers. Ewan, yeah.
Quick question for Roy. Looking at the optimization software, is it designed for an off-grid solution, or is there an opportunity to factor in the local grid situation?
The short answer is that the software will not consider the design of the local grid, but it can be used in conjunction with a grid tie-in.
Right. The reason I ask is that, and I'm sure it's the situation over in Ireland as well as it is in the Western Isles, we've got a lot of what I would call distributed energy assets that are either constrained or curtailed, and so that you have an opportunity to use that either constrained or curtailed generation to provide power, perhaps through a sort of thermal vector like hydrogen to power drying equipment. And the reason I bring that up is that because when you're harvesting seaweed, that you're only talking about maybe a 1 to 2 month period, and then you've got the question of what you do with your equipment out with that or your power supply.
Yes, and I think that part of the answer to that is to be involved in community projects, such that the energy that one's using is not only the infrastructure is not only for the SME in question, but serves a wider purpose. The software that we're producing is not designed to be a detailed simulation of renewable energy systems. It's just designed to provide a first iteration sizing and costing set of figures.
Okay. And just what I will do as an action, I've already shared it with Morven, but we've just completed a techno-economic options appraisal on pre-processing equipment for a pilot seaweed farm proposal that we're progressing. It might shed some ideas, different perspectives on the work that you're doing. So I'll fire that over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kesh to Biella, any other questions?
Sorry, I have one asking there. Just on the same side there, same issue right there. In terms of the capex, we have small producers here or growers or harvesters here wishing to dry seaweed. Like, does your optimization software take into consideration, say, the amount of PV panels that are required or turbines, for instance? And you mentioned there, and I'm involved with a couple of other projects that's looking at community sharing of energy. Is it viable for a person to do this as a standalone project, rather than, as you mentioned there to you, and that you might be looking at trying to integrate that in with a small community, energy community, where the power could be used when you don't require it and it's being produced?
So to answer the first question, yes, it will factor into the cost. It will factor in the cost of purchasing and installing all the modules, whether that is wind turbine and or photovoltaic cells and batteries of various types, and perhaps hydrogen facilities as well. And the second question, is it viable for an individual? It depends how much you're producing, depends on your yield. So for the smallest producers, I wouldn't start off with trying to make your setup fully renewable. I would get something seeded and in the water, and then reinvest some of your profits into the future for increasing your sustainability.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's just another question there in the chat. How does the treatment of foreshore licence in Ireland compare internationally? Morven, would you like to just let us know, was it difficult for your group to get the licence? It's quite long and complicated here to get the an initial foreshore licence.
No, I found it quite straightforward working with Crown Estate Scotland. We have a named contact there who's really quite interested in the seaweed industry, and I think that helps. We got a licence to occupy quite easily. The form was very simple, and then the licence to occupy gives you time to build up your marine licence application, and then once you've got that, you can go back and move it on to a full lease. So we've done that now, and it was quite straightforward. I would say though that the marine licence side of it was completely different. It was really drawn out, long, and quite complicated. And that was with Marine Scotland.
And how long did that take, the whole thing overall? A year?
It took about, well, yeah, we were working on it for quite a long time. So I suppose our whole licensing took over a year, but that was we changed contractors part of the way through as well. They changed the people who were supporting us part of the way through, and that didn't help. But there was a lot of time involved. And then the determination date with Marine Scotland, it went way over because of COVID, because the government agencies had slowed down quite a lot as a result of COVID. So there were a whole load of it would be hard for me to answer that because there were so many conflicting things happening. Yeah.
That's fine. Andrew, would you like to ask a question?
Well, it's more of a comment on
yes.
The renewables. I've got some experience of renewables in that I'm a director of a community wind farm here in the Western Isles with a 9 megawatt wind farm. And what I'd say is that when you work out what you're going to install in terms of renewables, especially wind turbines, you've got to think of the political dimension. Because from my experience, we had to borrow a lot of money, and we had to build a business model that showed how much money we'd get in and how much money we'd put out. But during that time, we had a lot of political wrangling because, for instance, the climate change levy exemption was removed politically, which cost us £100,000 a year. And for each country, you've got to work out what if you're going to use feed-in tariff rather than just put something into your drying. You've got to work out what the system is for your own country. So I would add a proviso that be sure that you know how the business model is going to work for your country, and remember that overnight things can change if the government policy changes. So that's what I'd say on that one.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Any other questions, Kashbiela?
Just if I could come back just to Rai there, just one question on the hydrogen systems. Rai, have you any knowledge of any seaweed businesses using hydrogen as part of the energy system they have to power it at the moment?
The short answer is that I'm not aware of it. Hydrogen systems are less, the technology is, I suppose, less well established than electric, and people at the moment seem to be sort of going down headlong into the electric bandwagon, and hydrogen is less well used. But there's no reason why it ought not to be, and I think there are many reasons why it should be investigated in more detail. And one thing you can do with hydrogen, for example, is you can burn it to produce heat, which then can dry your seaweed. So it's not necessarily that you then require an electrical solution. You can have a hydrogen system with a burner, and the flame produces heat, which dries out your seaweed.
Okay, thank you.
Ewan, do you have a question? You're just on mute there.
Gav Malishko. Just coming back at that point, yes, there is an initiative in the Western Isles. Hebridean Seaweed are engaging with the Net Zero Hub in Stornoway. So whilst it's not actually happening on the ground at the moment, it should be happening over the next 5 years or so.
Yes, and I suppose just to add a little bit more to that, we are in the process of obtaining funding to do some drying activities using hydrogen. So I'm hoping that that is something that will develop with time.
Okay. Manuel Kesh be ella. Just go míle mai a go bhfuil of thrastalar and seminar shows míle buchas in the country like a hug a Tom doing margin. So thanks a million for everyone for participating in the seminar, and a special thanks to all of our speakers for taking the time to contribute to this seminar. So if the speakers don't mind, I'll circulate the presentations. And there's also going to be a recording of this seminar available on the SWGROW YouTube channel. So we've other seminars that we've recorded if anyone would like to look back on them. And as I said, we'll be conducting more seminars in the new year. So we'll just keep an eye on the social media pages of SWGROW. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.